Welcome to the joint meeting of the Troy Planning Commission and the City Council. And we're pleased to be here this evening to review the Pavilions of Troy Planned Unit Development, PUD number 9. We're looking forward to some exciting and interesting presentations and then some discussion. So we'll, Mr. Zerlike, do I call on now?
I'll do a brief introduction, if I may, and then turn this over to the Assistant Manager for Services, Mark Miller. I'm sorry, Tony?
Do we have to do a roll call? Yes.
Okay.
I saw a signal down there.
Mayor Schilling,
Here?
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Broomfield, Eisenbacher,
Here.
Fleming,
Here.
Howrlack, Kerwin,
Here.
Planning Commissioner Edmonds,
Here.
Hudson,
Here.
Maxwell,
Here.
Senzika,
Here.
Schultz,
Thanks.
Stratt,
Here.
Hagel,
Here.
Holman, Leck,
Quorum present. And now, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. And after a brief introduction, I'm going to ask those that were more involved in this than I, and that would be Mr. Miller, our Assistant Manager in charge of services, Brent Savadant, our Planning Director, Dick Carlisle, Planning Consultant, Lori Bloom, our City Attorney. And what had happened essentially is that Mr. Gary Sakwa of Grand Sakwa has a purchase agreement for the parcel of property known as the Pavilions, also known as the old Kmart site. And we had met with Mr. Sakwa where he asked some questions about what might the City Council and City Planning Commission think about taking a somewhat different direction than what's contained in the existing PUD for the pavilions. And the response was, well, why don't we get the Planning Commission and City Council together in the same room, and they can be asked directly for their input relative to this project. And that essentially is what happened. I'm going to now ask Mr. Miller to take it from here.
Thank you. I believe we probably can talk from right here. Do you think, or should we go up? We'll go up
It's
here.
up to you.
Let's go up here. We're going to make a short presentation and we're going to start off with Brent Sabnat, the Planning Director, and I will speak a little bit, and then Richard Carlisle from Carlisle Wortman will also speak a little.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, Planning Commission, and others in the audience this evening. Many of you will remember on October 15th, 2007, the City Council granted concept development plan approval for the Pavilions of Troy Planned Unit Development, or PUD. And it was a phased mixed-use project that everyone got really excited about. And just to bring those of you who weren't on the City Council or Planning Commission, or those of you in the audience who aren't real familiar with PUDs, I'm going to give you a 30-second primer on the PUD approval process in Troy. It's a three-step process. The first step is Concept Development Plan Approval, or CDP approval. And when a petitioner is granted CDP approval, they get approval of the general concept. The property is rezoned to PUD, and the PUD agreement or the development agreement is also approved. And this approval is good for 5 years. So the approval that was granted in 2007 is good for 5 more years. Step 2 is Preliminary Development Plan Approval, or PDP. It's essentially very similar to site plan approval, where the details are kind of ironed out related to the development of the property. And the Preliminary Development Plan is required to be consistent with the concept plan as well as the PUD agreement, or the development agreement for the property. Step 3 is Final Development Approval. It's administrative, and it basically involves the administrative approval of technical drawings such as engineering drawings. So it's 3 steps. After the Pavilions property received concept development plan approval in 2007, the applicant did not apply for the preliminary development plan approval, and the property was put on the market for sale. Grand Sakwa Properties has executed a purchase agreement for the property, and it anticipates a closing date in December of 2009. And Grand Sakwa has indicated that they intend to amend the concept development plan to permit a different mix of uses and a different intensity of uses that was approved originally in 2007. And I would also note that the property is also controlled by a consent agreement which has the effect of limiting the development potential of the northern portion of the PUD property. And the consent judgment will also have to be amended in order to permit the development that's proposed, that we're going to discuss this evening. And for questions related to that, we have the applicants can speak to that if you so desire. And real briefly regarding the project schedule, the developer is very motivated to expedite this process and develop the site in a very quick manner. The applicant has requested a very aggressive review and approval schedule. And just to briefly touch on that, October 6th, which is a week from tomorrow, there's a Planning Commission study session scheduled where they intend to present the concept development plan to the Planning Commission for review. October 13th, there's a Planning Commission public hearing scheduled. They're hoping for a Planning Commission recommendation of approval for the concept development plan. October 19th, there's a City Council public hearing scheduled where the City Council will have an opportunity to review the application and potentially approve the amended concept development plan. And if that is received, if the applicant receives concept development plan approval, they will be eligible to seek step 2, which is preliminary development plan approval. And with that brief introduction, I will now like to introduce Mark Miller, the Assistant City Manager, Services and Economic Development.
Thank you, Brent.
It's a mouthful.
As Brent noted, this is the approved CDP for this project that's in place right now is a complex project, but it also did receive a number of public-private partnerships. There was a brownfield plan approved for this site, and that allowed the development to be eligible to capture over $13 million in tax increment financing that was specifically for the demolition of the property and lead and asbestos abatement. Also, there were some that allows for eligibility for tax credits. The property did receive MEDC education tax credits. However, the MEC did not ever grant Michigan business tax credits. However, there is a Senate Bill 323 which has been approved by the Michigan Senate and has been recommended for approval by a committee of the Michigan House, which creates a new category of a major, I might get the terminology right, it's a major project, which in effect targets this site for tax credits. So that is in place, but I would say that one thing is working against this capture of tax increments is that time, because the sooner that you did demolition, the sooner you start capturing increased tax revenues. I would also note that the reduced market value has also affected the ability to capture increased tax increments. Also, the Downtown Development Authority targeted this site for increased tax increments also, and that was for just over $5 million. I would say that one of the things that we want to talk about this evening is a public-private partnership, more specifically for parking decks. There is some discussions about the Downtown Development Authority and that the DDA expires or sunsets in 2018, but also there are some other alternatives that we're investigating. I know that Mr. Carlisle is going to talk a little bit about that. With that, that's the economic development update. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Carlisle.
I think as both Mr. Savedant and Mr. Miller did indicate, the plan that we are all familiar with in terms of the Pavilion PUD was based on certain market conditions that existed prior to the market conditions we are certainly faced with right now. And I think certain other facts and assumptions that were probably pertinent at that point in time. From the beginning, the discussions that we've had with the SACWA team have quite a bit centered on what some of the new realities are, particularly the downturn in the residential market, and I'll, of course, really allow them to present the specifics on that. Obviously, some of the issues that the council will be dealing with later on tonight and well out through the rest of the year really are quite a bit related to those particular market conditions that have certainly changed the playing field here in the city of Troy, as well as Michigan and in other parts of the country. The issues really here boil down, I mean, in terms of the more, the larger picture issues that this boils down to right at this point are really twofold. In the development agreement, there was a formula that was in place essentially to try to ensure the mixed-use nature of the project as it was conceived and proposed at the time. And primarily, some of the concerns that had been raised, I believe, by council as well as others, was the necessity to integrate residential in with the other components of the project on a phase-type basis. And so there is currently a formula that requires one residential unit for every 3,600 square feet of retail use, 1,500 square feet of office use, and every 4 hotel rooms on the site. So in other words, the idea was to attempt to integrate the residential development as various other components of the project came online. And of course, again, the SACWA team has indicated to us that at this point in time, the residential market is extremely soft, and they have a deep concern about being tied to that. The second issue is the issue of the overall intensity of the site. And the ultimate build-out of the Pavilions project as it was conceived was really dependent upon parking structures. As a matter of fact, the Big Beaver Plan, as a document that has been endorsed by City Council and Planning Commission and the DDA, is really also the kind of intensities that we're looking for in the Big Beaver Plan are really dependent upon public parking structures, parking decks. I shouldn't say necessarily public parking, but I mean parking decks being incorporated with projects so that the intensity that was envisioned in the Big Beaver Plan could be achieved. There are a number of ways that this can be done. It can be obviously have public parking structures, or we can incentivize the private construction of parking decks to ultimately attain the kind of density that we're hoping to achieve. And board members and commissioners may recall that this particular intersection of the Big Beaver and Coolidge Road area was one of a lot of importance in the Big Beaver Plan as an area to create the kind of density and intensity that would be a jump start for the rest of the things that went on in the Big Beaver corridor. I believe what you're going to see are some options before you in terms of various intensities that would involve both with or without a public-private partnership. I would want to say one thing, is that there may well be other options besides just strictly DDA participation in order to achieve that kind of density, and those are options that we are currently exploring. I would refrain from getting into a lot of detail of them because we haven't had a chance to fully flesh them out. We obviously need to discuss those further with city management and the city attorney's office to ensure that those are viable options, but there are potentially other options other than simply DDA participation in order to create the kind of intensity that ultimately we were looking for, and that what I believe the applicant has said they could achieve with that kind of involvement. So I'm going to limit my comments at this point in time, but also say that we're also all here once you've heard the discussion and had the opportunity for your input, but we are really looking for the direction at this point in time from both the Planning Commission and the City Council, because these will really determine the course of this project from that standpoint, but we will also be here to answer any specific questions that any of you may have. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Gary SACWA, who will be introducing the project, I believe, and actually the team of his team from both within Grand SACWA as well as his consultants that will then be giving a presentation about that. So, okay.
Good evening, everybody. I haven't been here in about 9 years. We own close to 1 million square feet in the city of Troy between Timberland Office Park and Midtown. We also built the condominiums over there and many other condominiums in the community besides Beach Forest 1, 2, and 3, Chelsea Village 1, 2, and 3. We've been here for probably close to over 20 years anyway. I don't think you've had any problems with the company in any way. I sure haven't heard about it if you have. It's a pleasure for us to come back into the community at this time. Unfortunately, things are bad everywhere, not just in this community, but all over the United States. I certainly want to thank you all for coming this evening to give us some kind of an indication if you'd like us to go forward or if you'd like us to pull back. With the economy the way it is, we only have a few choices of what projects we can do and we can't do because of limiting borrowing power that at least that we have. So this evening what we came here for was to show you some concepts only. The professionals that are here you've worked with before, every one of them. At the same time, we wanted to voice our concerns over how and why and what we could do with this project, how we could clean it up quickly. And the reason we want to get going quickly is for the simple reason that we lose a construction season, I might as well lose 3. It's just the way the business is today. We have the money to do this project today, and we'd like to get going to do it. If not, we can take our time and wait a couple years and get it done if it's too fast for everybody. So city manager said no way to find that out is come in front of everybody and give some discussion, and hopefully you'll give some feedback to the staff, who I can tell you has been marvelous. And I guess with that, I have with me our consultants and our in-house, Nick Donofrio, who has helped, I think, with the PUD here at the city of Troy, and our in-house counsel, Chris Corden, who can bring up some of the deviations that we are asking for from the PUD plan. We're bringing several concepts before you this evening. None of them have to be done, but these were just some ideas, and what we're looking for is this a project that the community wants to get going on right away? Is this a project the city wants to have wait? And either way is fine. It's not an adversarial situation here. We're fine with whatever you decide. So we're here for your input. And who's going to go first? Nick? Okay. Thank you all very much for coming this evening. I understand you have a rough night ahead of you, and we're taxpayers in the community with 1 million square feet, so I wish you all good luck, and John, especially you.
Good evening. My name's Nick Donofrio. I'm with Grant Saqua, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the residential real estate market. Of course, everyone knows you can't open up a newspaper without knowing how bad, this market is. I gave a handout, or I passed out a handout that listed some of the points. It was just a summary of a presentation that I'd given to staff a few weeks ago, and they asked me to summarize that. So I'm going to briefly go through that, and in the meantime, as I said, every day you open the paper, whether it's Barron's on Saturday down to Business Week this past week, the news about the area just keeps coming in. And the real question is, when and where is there a bottom? That's the real question. Average sales price has dropped 22.10% in Troy within the past year. There's currently 847 homes listed. 26%, or say about a third of them, are in foreclosure. Birmingham, there's 515 homes currently listed. 45%, almost 50% of the homes in Birmingham that are listed are in foreclosure. Now this has that real effect. This is why the prices are plummeting, because that's the drive on there. And the real question is, when do the foreclosures stop? That's the question everyone wants to know. Barron's on Saturday came out with an article where they're estimating there's an additional 7 million. That's over 10% of all the people currently holding mortgages in our country. 65 million hold mortgages. Over 10%, 7 million, are in the delinquency pipeline heading right towards foreclosure. Right now, this is nationwide, there's 9 months, 9.3 months as of last month, of homes currently listed, used homes currently listed. Well, if you took that 7 million, that's another year and 3 months. So that's even greater than the current that we have. So what it's telling me is that we're going to be going in the opposite direction from where we want to go. We're heading in that very fast. and it's going to occur very quickly. Only 51 condominiums were sold in Troy in the past 2 years. Now, I took this as everything 2000, year 2000 or newer, west of Rochester Road. The majority of those were Midtown Square with an average selling price of about $170,000. When they were new a few years ago, 3 to 4 years ago, they were averaging $285,000. So they've even had a larger decrease. In Birmingham, and tells you a little bit about the shadow market that you hear so much of in the news, there's only 21 condominiums were sold, 2000 or newer, in the past 2 years. I used the 2000 to show what newer built units, what they were going for in there. There are 61 in that same period that have been leased. So if you're only getting 21 sales and 61 leased, where in Troy it's 25 are currently on the market and 25 are being leased, there are 61 in Birmingham that are being leased out. That just tells me people aren't even trying to sell their home. That's a shadow market coming back, that they're just leasing their homes out. So there's a whole other group of people that would like to sell, that can't sell, that are trying to take some kind of income coming in. That's the leasing market. This was a quote. I included this quote in here. This came out of Builders Magazine. Builders Magazine actually tracks all the markets across the country. I mean, there's not a market that you couldn't get information on. And when he lists that, this is from the editor of Builders, if you're searching for the bottom of the housing market, look right here in Morbid, Detroit, Michigan. Hanley Wood Market Intelligence, which works for builders, but they're also independent, lists out of the 75 markets they track, the major metropolitan markets they track, it lists Detroit. And again, the Detroit metro area includes Troy. It's the metro area. It lists us as the weakest housing market in the nation. Housing Predictor, which tells us where the houses are coming from, what's going to happen with the price, out of 250 cities they tracked, we're the worst. We're number one with the greatest loss of value for 2009. Employment, I'm going to get to the Case-Shiller because that's probably the key out of everything on this. I'm going to skip down to the employment. PNC Bank, PNC Financial, that bought National City, they're out of Pittsburgh. Their employment trends, they list us as 50 out of 50 on employment trends. It uses the words virtual free fall in doing this. Now again, employment goes back to the housing. The Case-Shiller, which is going to be coming out tomorrow, that really drives Wall Street. If you listen to CNBC or read Wall Street or Barron's or any one of those, they'll always go back to Case-Shiller, and that's due out tomorrow. But for the past month, they tracked 20 major metropolitan areas. 18 metropolitan areas had 2 positive months. 2, Detroit and Las Vegas, are still in a fall. They have not even hit 1 positive month yet. We're still going down yet. And it's the fall of that the Detroit metropolitan area that's most significant, because the nation's at a 2003 pricing level. We're at 1995. We're the only major metropolitan market below 2000. We're at 1995 and still falling. So it's, again, says there's no bottom in that housing market, and we don't know when we're going to hit that bottom in the housing market. I think that's enough on the housing market. That gets the point across. Jim, we're going to bring up our architect.
Wow, I'm impressed. I have a condo in Troy, and it's not looking good. My name is Jim Rennie. I'm with Rossetti. I'm a principal of the firm. I've been here before, and many of you may recognize me. We have the pleasure of being here again. Along with my colleagues from Rossetti, I also have Randy Metz from Grissom Metz, who's representing one of the many consultants that will be on this team if this project moves forward. So what I'd like to do, let me position this, this PowerPoint here. I'd like to do is take you through a vision, a concept of what Grand Sakwa is imagining for this Kmart site. And again, keep in mind, this is a concept. This does not involve the participation of Planning Commission nor City Council, but it represents an intention, it represents a sense of quality, it represents, you'll hear also represents a density in use. And that's what we're here to hopefully have you discuss among yourselves. And, but I want to be able to paint this picture for you to give you a sense of what's being imagined. So the subject property, which you're very familiar with, is what we're looking at. And one of the things that's really important to convey is the objectives of this proposed development. Many of the things that you've already maybe heard a couple years ago are still in place. Very much part of the mantra of what the Grand Saco development team is proposing to do. A sense of authenticity, creating a sense of destination. We've all talked about how it's important to relate to the Somerset as an asset, and how this could be, as combined, a even stronger asset as a destination for Troy. We understand the nature of a walkable environment, very critical in terms of inviting and having people be a part of and participate in an environment like this. And connecting, we all know about connecting. We spent a lot of time for a couple of years talking about connections with the community. This is still an objective of this particular plan. It's all about people, because people on the ground. It's about how you connect with people, create different kinds of places that people can interact, things that appeal to different generations. And all the amenities are a part of this, that are about what does this have to offer that may be different, that may be in this area, or for that matter in the region. Idea of scale and how you relate to a sense of design, which as architects and planners we are very sensitive to, and ultimately the sense of sustainability. I mean, we're talking about knowing what it's like in this world today, that there's nothing, you cannot not design with sustainability in mind. So that's the objectives of this Grand Saco team. Well, of course, there's a relationship to the Big Beaver Corridor. And by and large, you'll find that the concepts do just that. They relate to the Big Beaver Corridor study. We're not only familiar with the 2020 vision plan, but we've certainly looked at the Big Beaver Corridor study from several years now. So I want to be able to kind of touch on how this relates to the Big Beaver Corridor study. So what you see here is an insert of a concept on the subject property that we are talking about right now. This represents ultimately a configuration that will change, will evolve based on your input, in working with your planning team. We are very anxious to get to that. So this is a concept that we're sharing right now. First of all, we understand how important the intersection is of Big Beaver and Coolidge. Very significant. We understand how the Big Beaver plan addresses that. So we started out right away addressing that, something that maybe wasn't as obvious when I was here before you, but we've really hit this, we think, right on. The idea is to create a sense of a gateway, if you will, a place that becomes an icon that represents the community of Troy, represents the community at large, in fact. So some of the thoughts that go along with this is creating a feature that's attractive, a feature that can not only be experienced by those who are within the development and participating and patronizing it, but by the community. So it invites the community in from the corner, from the intersection. So the images of dining by it, kids looking at the water, imagining how maybe a feature like this could be sort of the signature for Troy. That not only starts the extension out into Big Beaver, but also into Coolidge. So from this intersection, we start to look at what the edge conditions are, and that's of course very important for the community of Troy. And so we imagine how the images might look like during the day with signage, a sense of a place with buildings, what landscaping and trees, how important that is to the Big Beaver study. We recognize that. What it might look like at night, so that the presence is not only during the day, but it transforms in the evening. So we think that's very important, and the development team is looking very carefully at how to address the edges at Big Beaver and Coolidge. So we talked about the corner. Let's move in a little bit. Almost in the heart of this development is what we call the Civic District. And it's about creating a place that the community have a sense of ownership. So now, not only is the gateway a place you enter into the Civic District, which is about community. It's about being with people, dining with people, having coffee with people, having events. Maybe there are programming events, whether they're festivals, carnivals, an art fair. Those are kind of aspects or types of uses that may take place in a civic district like this that we're talking about. Again, a vision of what it might look like or could look like. When, thinking about the scale and materials, I think are all very important. But it's a very pedestrian-oriented district of the development. Go further yet, and we're envisioning an entertainment district. So the idea that there's entertainment, there's activities going on, day in and day out. Whether it's a park that allows for, move on to the next image, a park that accommodates, quiet repose, to be able to sit and read a book, or maybe a place that has a small festival or a small event that takes place on the green, if you will. So it's a place that is active and can change over time depending on the time of year, time of month. What happens in the winter? I mean, could there be an ice sculpture garden in this park, for example? So we envision many of the things that you're seeing here in terms of scale, in terms of textures, in terms of color during the summer and spring and fall months. So that is the connection of the pedestrian corridor. So maybe a plan looks like this. You can start to see how addressing the corner, the ultimate vision of maybe Big Beaver and its trees, how it connects and goes into the site. So again, the idea is to bring people and community, invite community into the development. This is your destination. It is your place to enjoy, and it's your place to participate in. Let's talk a little bit about then the other parts of the development. We envision a retail promenade, and that district is really the idea of walking. We talked about walkability. We talked about being able to run into people and enjoy spaces that are not just building and sidewalk, because we recognize that people will only spend time in places that they feel comfortable in. So we envision along this retail promenade that this idea of not only landscape, of maybe canopies, creating spaces that people can ebb and flow from, a place that maybe invites high-end vendors or vendors that might want to participate on and off, but becomes a place that you can stroll, and it becomes yet another pedestrian experience. So in the yellow kind of represents your by and large, your pedestrian zone and how it links and connects with each other. But ultimately, this has to be connected to the community, to the adjacent properties, to the street. And you can see how we can start to connect to Big Beaver and to Coolidge. Look at how we start to want to suggest connections with Somerset, because as I said in the beginning, Somerset's an asset. We want to be able to reinforce that and create even a bigger asset, create a sense of destination by linking to that asset that's there. Furthermore, thinking about how it connects even beyond that. These are both potentially automobile connections as well as pedestrian connections. Again, extending from the inside out and outside in. And then, of course, further north, additional connection that allows the it's an environment that's meant to be a place to be, but a place easy to get to and easy to get out of. So it's meant to be inviting, meant to be exciting, meant to be a destination. I'm going to very quickly represent three different thoughts in terms of development on the north parcel. I won't spend a lot of time on because we'll talk about that after this presentation. But you can see what's suggested in the north parcel. Parcel 1 is of course a mixed-use development that we're talking about. Parcel 2 starts to suggest if the infrastructure, if there can't be other parking decks and so on, what level of density can actually in fact be developed. And then this particular diagram represents what the limitations are, the deed restriction on that particular property and how that affects the planning. So I just want to make sure we understand that the intention of this development, we've only begun, but the intention of the development is a very high quality, people space, environment, and community place that's consistent with perhaps the application that you've seen before in terms of its intent and objectives. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Cordon. I'm General Counsel for Grand Saco Properties. And what I'm sure is a transparent and shameless attempt to gain your attention, I have some gifts. Gentlemen, all these gifts. These are really just brochures of Grand Saco companies, just in case those of you may not be familiar with our history and reputation. My task tonight is to discuss the PUD agreement and to key in on those changes we think are necessary to make the project viable and successful both for our company and the city. And by and large, the original PUD agreement is in generally good shape. I think in large measure it is in fact based on the PUD agreement we probably negotiated for Midtown Square, and I think Nick Donofrio was a consultant for the city at that time who helped negotiate that form of ordinance and the ensuing agreement. And it provides a generally good framework within which the owner and the city can work for the development of the property. But there are some flaws in it that are necessitated by current market conditions that need to be addressed. Perhaps the most significant flaw in it is that it was really completely dependent upon the favorable market conditions that existed at the time it was drafted and the assumption that those favorable market conditions would continue. And unfortunately, it didn't build in any flexibility or allowance to adjust for those market conditions. So most of the points that we've asked to amend in the PUD are simply extensions of the points that Nick and Jim touched on and to address those concerns. I know we're short on time, so I'm really going to simply address the salient points of the proposed amendment. Last week I sent a draft of an amendment to the City Attorney Lori Bloom, and my understanding that she may have already circulated that to you. So I'm just going to address, again, the key points of that amendment. No surprise, the first one is the elimination of the residential formula and the increase of the maximum permitted retail use from 500,000 to 650,000. And I don't want anybody to leave here with the misconception that we have anything against residential development. Over the past 15 years, we've probably been the biggest developer of residential properties in Michigan. We do it well. We've been successful at it. It's been lucrative for us. And in the right market, it's been a great product. But, you know, we are a for-profit company, and in this market, it simply just doesn't make sense to develop residential properties at this time. The agreement also had two concepts of look-back provisions. One was a shared parking look-back, and the other one was an off-site traffic improvement look-back. And that was really a function of when the property was intended to be developed in multiple phases, and the thought was that after the first phase or the second phase, the city planner and the developer would go back and really evaluate the traffic components of the property and make changes that are necessary. In our case, we, as was suggested earlier, we intend to move very quickly with the development of the property. We'd like to develop it in one entire phase, and therefore the look-backs would really be unnecessary at that point in time. We proposed vacating Cunningham Drive. And curiously, when we met with the city planner and the city staff members, it seems like they were suggesting that to the prior owners that they vacate Cunningham Drive, and there was some resistance and pushback against that by BlackRock. We believe it makes more sense for the property to be developed as a cohesive unit, and as a result of that, we would like to vacate Cunningham Drive. The amendment also addresses the consent judgment. There's the consent judgment that imposes some restrictions on the property, and that's really more of a legal thing. I think I'm addressing that with Lori Bloom, and we've made progress on that. We've contacted the owners of the other property, and I think an amendment to the consent judgment that would allow for the development of the property as we're proposing it is imminent, so that should not be an issue. The amendment also addresses financial incentives, and that simply asks the city to covenant and agree to cooperate with us to pursue all financial incentives available for which the property may be eligible. And those are really the salient points of the amendment. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Gary Sakwa.
Thanks, everybody, for a brief synopsis of what we're attempting to do. Again, nothing that you've seen this evening is set in stone, and very, very, very far from it. But what we want to do is hear from you this evening and with the staff after. I know you have a big meeting later on, to go over what we've suggested to see if there's room for us to continue. We are going to buy this property, whether, you tell us to go on forward this year or not. We're buying the property, and then it'll just be a function of, when we can all get around to going to do it. We're hoping to try to do it now. Obviously, our other projects that we would start would maybe put this, back further than maybe we'd all like. But we have the opportunity to do it now without skipping any meetings, without skipping any direction from the Planning Commission and the council, without skipping any detail from the staff that they're asking. We're not asking to skip the steps. We'd just like to speed up the area where we could get going, to tear down the building that's an eyesore, to get some taxes coming to the community. And in order to get that going on, our company only has so many dollars. As you can imagine, this is a very expensive project. We think it will end up in the end being a couple $100 million. We do have others, but we're not capable of doing 5 or 6 of this size at the same time. We do have 7 million feet of commercial property in our portfolio. We are in 6 or 7 other states. We're predominantly residential builders. I think you can tell that, especially by Robin, over the years, how much we've developed residential property in here, in this community. We've enjoyed the community, and we're here to stay. We've sold nothing we've ever built anywhere, for that matter, let alone in the city of Troy. So we have a real vested interest here, and we'd like to stay here. We'd like to do it now. Unfortunately, the office market is very bad. In fact, John, you might be a little light on your numbers for taxes coming in. These buildings are unfortunately emptying out. We have some of our own here in the city of Troy. We're being offered buildings, office buildings here for probably 1/3 of the cost of a new building to be put up, let alone the tenant improvement checks that the tenants are making you write, along with the free rent they're making you give. That's just some of the problems that not just this city, that every city has. I think one thing about Troy is they've always been a #1 city. They'll continue to be. You're tackling this problem head on, and whatever effect that has on us, we will live with that. We're hoping to contribute to the tax base and not take away and do it in a hurry. But this city's catching it early. I can tell you a bunch of cities you're going to be reading about real soon that they won't be in such good shape that you're in, and probably will be. So thanks this evening, and if anybody has any questions for anybody, we would appreciate answering them. If you want to just talk with your staff later, because you have something else going on this evening, that's fine with us too. Again, I appreciate the time that you've afforded us with everything going on this evening, and it's a pleasure to be back in your community. Thank you.
Thank you. I think while we're all here, that it's appropriate that we have questions from council members or planning commission members, or comments that they want to make about the information that was provided. We did set aside the time until 7:15. We do need to stop at that time, or if we're done sooner, we can stop before, but I don't know that we will be. So does someone wish to begin with a question or a comment? Is that your signal, Robin? That was a good one.
What I used whenever there were 10 cards and I'm reading.
That's a lot easier than seeing the hand up and down. Councilwoman Beltramini.
It will come as no surprise to anybody sitting at this table, and not Mr. Sakwa either. I have grave concerns about totally eliminating the formula. And only because, and you used in your presentation, you've reviewed Vision 2020, you've reviewed the Big Beaver Corridor Plan, and if you note, the citizens of Troy in both of those documents at some point wanted a walkable urban style place to go in Troy. And this is a retail development. And I understand that housing is not economically feasible at this time. I get all of that. So can you build this in such a manner through some other tool, a form-based tool, some other kind of covenant that will allow housing in these buildings or in subsequent buildings as part of the original formula? Anybody? You got a team.
I can tell you right now, to commit to something like that would be foolish. BlackRock, the company probably has $1.5 trillion, and they were not interested in obviously building this out the way they had described doing it. Candidly, I don't know anybody who can get a residential loan for a development today. In order to build these commercial buildings and to have the density that you attempted to have in your last conceptual plan is impossible to do. You couldn't get a loan. You have to build them together. There's an awful lot of architectural and engineering that has to be done, and once you start, you can't stop. There's no way in the world I could even begin to tell you that I could start to do that. From the sales reports, from the economic forecasts, to just a nationwide flood of foreclosures going on. Candidly, this developer is not interested in building residential property anywhere today. If we couldn't do it, I'm not going to go broke trying to do it. I can only tell you that most of these things are market-driven. We know what we can lease. We've been doing this for 35 years, and a lot of them I've done with you. At the end of the day, if there's a marketplace for it, we want to do it. We're not saying we don't want to do it. We don't want to be forced to do it with the precious dollars that we have. We could wait, I guess, years and years and maybe develop the project then. We will be buying it. That's another option. But to get the project started today, candidly, I have never lied to you. I'm not going to lie to you now. That's not something that our company is interested in doing. But
And I appreciate that. My concern is, if you build this like this, at 1.5-story retail, as you showed in your visuals, we will always have a retail-only development here. We can never have that truly mixed-use, walkable development here. And my concern is, I don't want to thumb my nose at a first-class development in any way, but I don't want to totally give up the people's vision either. So that's my conundrum. And you've said no, so.
well, I just wouldn't mislead you.
No, I appreciate that.
That's fine. Michael Hudson, who's the vice chair, who's actually chair today.
I don't have a question. I'd like to continue commenting on Councilman Beltramini's account. This parcel of land is a jewel. It is the entrance to the Beaver Corridor. We spent a lot of time developing this PUD with BlackRock. Essential in that was the residential component. That's what made it live and breathe and become a part of the community. And looking at these plans, it looks like we're paying only lip service to residential. It looks like, at least from the schedule here, after a full build-out, we've got a little teeny section way in the back northern part for residential. It took us 20 years to get Somerset put together. It's a jewel today. If we've got to wait 20 years to get the residential portion in this PUD, that's truly a mixed use. That's what we want, and I'm willing to wait.
Other folks want to make a comment or ask a question? Yes. Tom Stratt, Commissioner?
I just had a question. What is your time slot, or what is your extended period of time that you expect this development to take?
Well, I would imagine that the project would probably take from start to finish a couple years if we started, obviously, soon. We have to take down the buildings and crush the concrete, and that alone will probably get us probably into April. And then we would start some of the improvements to build out the project. Today, to tell you that we can lease this space out, in 3 months or 6 months would probably, not be very true. I can tell you we have an awful lot of interest in the property. We have no plans to send to anybody, so it's very hard to deal with them without having an approved plan. And we also have a lot of work to do with the staff. This was really just to see what you, whether you wanted to move this forward or you didn't. Our plans are nowhere definite. Whether we ask for 650,000 feet or 400,000 feet really doesn't matter today. It's a matter of If you're expecting, when this plant starts, to have residential in the very beginning, we can't do that. I don't know anybody that could. And if you're prepared to hold the land and not have anything come from it, we are too. We can wait as long as you want to wait. We believe that it's a jewel. We believe it's a great spot. We believe the city's a great spot. I'm not arguing with you at all. It's just a matter of what you want us to do. It's not adversarial. So if you want it to wait, it'll wait. I don't know how long it'll wait. It'll wait as long as, I guess, you want it to.
Well, as a follow-up, I just wanted to know, are you planning on doing this all in one phase, or are you phasing this out?
We have to probably do some of all the improvements at one time, which would be the underground infrastructure. As far as vertical going up, we do not have to do that. In fact, I think it would probably be unwise for us to do that. As you can see from the plan, we're really trying to have 3 different areas of building going on for small stores, little larger type box, pedestrian areas, entertainment areas. So tonight, to tell you that we have everything down, we're not here for that. We're here just to get an idea of what you would like to see and to work with the staff further. If I'm hearing residential as a essential component that has to be done now, I guess we don't have to meet, and that's fine. I'm glad we had this, and we can move on, and we'll address it in another couple of years, which is totally fine with us. We would hope that market conditions are the way they are, that you would see that the right way today to do it is for us, obviously, not to commit to residential property and can't do it. Last thing you need, I think, is a Square Lake and Telegraph event, if you're familiar with it. There's steel in the air, and there's no users for the property. They had a nice, pretty plan, but as far as, as the economy goes and economics go, they're broke. I'm not going broke for this, so.
John Tinkle was next, and then Councilwoman Mary Curley.
I have 2 questions for you. The first is, would you consider master planning the site for future residential units to be developed when the market conditions change, number 1? And number 2, talk to us a little bit about what kind of retailers and retail are you looking to put in all of these boxes that you show on this drawing? And I think I heard you just mention about a big box store. Is that part? No,
You heard larger venue stores, not big box.
Could you talk to both of those questions, please?
Okay. As far as making a plan for residential development in the future, I don't have any problem doing that. I just can't commit to when we get around to that year that it would happen, that I would not want to inventory the property after a certain amount of years. I could phase the project, and if working with the staff and/or the council and the planning commission, that there was a formula that would make sense for us, that would be definitive, that the market conditions change. That's what we do for a living. And we do it a real lot. We did 2,000 lots a year for 15 years. We built 600 homes a year for I don't even know how long. We know the market. Nobody has to teach us the market, and nobody here is telling us that business is good. I understand that. And if that's the vision that you have for the property, far be it for me to change it. We will wait. I'm just saying I don't have, the wherewithal to wait for this project, for when you're ready, that I'm going to be able to do it. I might have to put it on the back burner for me, too, to wait for the vision to come. As far as the boxes that you're referring to, maybe I misspoke, but to me, big boxes are the project that we did at 15 Mile and Coolidge, which are Home Depot and Kroger's and, something like that, and Target and Kohl's. We're not talking about doing anything like that here.
Are these more the boutique-type retailers?
Yes. We
So there's
picture
not
the
any big
biggest,
box here.
the biggest boxes that would be here would probably be 30,000 feet of, there's all kinds of users that are 30,000 feet. There's all kinds of users that are 1,500 square feet. There's going to be kiosks going up and down the street in the good weather, providing we have that pedestrian corridor. And there's going to be activities, hopefully, in the winter and in the summer around the fountains and things we're planning on doing on the corner. One of the main things that we were told to do from staff was to pay attention to the Big Beaver and Coolidge corner, that before the project before was not really opening up the corner to development and pedestrian friendly and traffic. It sort of turned its back on us. On the development. We are friends with the owners of Somerset. We have talked with the owners of Somerset. We plan on working together with the owners of Somerset. At the same time, this is a different project. This is not a mall, and by any stretch of the imagination. Again, we're not new to retail either. We have 7 million feet, and we feel like we know the market. We're buying this property because we know this is the best piece of property. No question, we're not arguing with you at all. That's why we want it also. So at the end of the day, we are taxpayers, we are property owners, as much as you are, if not more than most of you. And at the end of the day, we have a great deal of interest here. So again, the other component for residential, if it was right to do, oh, we'd be doing it all day long. And in fact, our other project, we did do it. And when we did do it, we sold like crazy. And now you see the resales that were $275, they're down to $150,000. This is a very bad time for this community and for the state of Michigan especially. There's no business. So I'm certainly not going to commit to building something I would guarantee lose money on.
I don't think I've heard this from the comments that have been made, but I think what I did like you saying that you would be willing to consider master planning, because this is really what this community is looking for as far as different housing stock to retain young people and to get a vibrancy in this property. So I was glad to hear that you would be willing to consider doing that.
I'm happy to consider it. I would just need a timeline as I'm going that I can't stop once I go. I make a commitment to use these dollars, I have to go. But the fact of the matter is if there's a place and a time that could be agreed upon for that type of development to happen, I'm all for it. That's what we do. I've done it before here, and I think you can all see it and how it's maintained and how it was done. And I think it's a pretty nice project, actually. I think everything we've done in Troy is nice.
Councilwoman Curran?
What was wonderful about this, however, was the synergy that was built in there. And I do echo the comments of the planning commissioners and Councilmember Beltramini, who spoke to preparing for that knowledge-based group we don't have, young people to come in, and they're attractive to a happening place. And when we segregate everything out so much, it's not a go-to place for that population. As we look at the transit center, we look at what you've done before, what this piece had was that synergy that was very attractive to that population. We don't have it in the city. So I appreciate your hearing on the full build-out sheet that you would look at that residential. As you prepared for today, I was wondering if you looked at Caswell, which does have a variety of housings, and how that sold out in terms of that development.
No, we didn't. What we did is get all the facts and background to present to you today to tell you what was going on in your city and the adjoining cities and states and actually nationally. It's just a fact always foreclosures are coming, and there's another wave of them. It's going to happen. As far as your desire to have a mixed-use plan and having young people, I think Midtown has young people. I think Troy has young people. I think your average age is not even, I don't even know. I don't know exactly what it is. Pretty young. But at the end of the day, again, if we have to mix it in, we can't do it. If it goes in a phase, we could take a look at it. But I certainly couldn't sit here today and or tomorrow tell you that I would guarantee you some phase of this development after X amount of years would be residential. I can tell you today we're going to do a senior citizens here, and we feel like doing a very high-quality, excellent one. That is one thing we can commit to today because we'd like to start doing that tomorrow if we could. Another thing with this study session this evening, it's very hard to plan when your DDA is probably not going to be forthcoming because there's no money. You can't make plans with things that don't exist. So our plans are probably more realistic for today than they were with the last development. I don't think you're going to be funding a parking deck so soon. There's a lot of problems here, and yet the Big Beaver Corridor plan and your vision can't be done no matter what. It's not, unless you're forthcoming with the parking decks and a little more public-private, I don't know that it can be done.
Councilman Fleming?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the discussion about the residential component and understand all that. But can someone remind me how many residential units we had planned for in the original PUD? Was there, I didn't look that up before coming to this meeting.
750, I believe.
Okay.
Or 700, something like that.
So we're talking about 750 units with maybe 2 people per unit or 3 people per unit. So we're talking 1,500, 2,000 people. We're talking would be living in this desire, if we had our ideal way, desire to live in here. That's not going to happen. I'm looking for a way to move this thing forward. I'll tell you, I think this is a wonderful piece of property. I hate to see it sit in this economy. This may not be the right time, but I'm looking for a compromise, a way to move this thing forward and not leave this on the table, walk away here tonight and do nothing and stall for a few years, because this economy is going to be quite a long time turning around, I think, for the residential component. I don't know what the answer is, but I would really hate tonight to close the door on this opportunity, because we all know the property's worth more with the buildings raised than they are standing. And I don't have the answer, but I really would like to see a way forward. I don't want to close the door tonight. I think we need to continue some dialogue here.
And since you've mentioned that, I had a thought on that you had a schedule about meeting with the planning commission next, and that was if you were getting favorable comments tonight. We haven't heard from everybody on this tonight. We've heard from some, but not from everybody. And the advantage in having the planning commission have a special study meeting, you could hear from each and every one of the planning commissioners about the various components and things that they'd like to hear. And it would give you that opportunity to hear that. So I would be in favor if the majority would like to do that kind of thing. I think that there's some elements that have been discussed and shown in your visual presentation that are very exciting and creative, and but I'm concerned about the amount of retail without any residential component. The thing that people seem to like the most is that it was a combination thing. Now, I realize the market's not there, and but I also think that it's a real plus that we have someone who's from the area that wanted to purchase the property, rather than have it be for someone, that has no connection to the community and the surrounding community. So I think that is a plus. And regardless of whether we can work things out and do something to begin now, or whether it's
Later.
Down the road, I think that those are things that we need to look at. Mr. Zerleg, did you want me to call on you? I didn't see you.
Since you asked,
Okay.
there's a comment that I could make, certainly. And that is that we have to take, as staff, the various and divergent comments and translate that into an assignment for someone to carry through. And it needs to be done with clarity. Perhaps one thing that we could accomplish today is to key on what Mr. Fleming indicated, and that is that one of the objectives for tonight was to take a look at the formula for residential properties being tied to every 3,600 square feet of retail. And if that's hard and fast, then it's pretty much an easy assignment at that point. We'll wait for a while. But if the assignment, and based on concurrence at this table, is that it's okay to have a master plan that phases in residential at some future time, and you can agree on the number of residential units based on a formula that would trigger the construction thereof, that's something that we can work with. But I don't even know if that's acceptable. I don't think the developer does either at this point.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Conrad?
The way we can ascertain what that is to do what the other developer did. And the developer had numerous meetings with the surrounding neighborhoods and community leaders, and this went through proper channels. The concern I have with this fast-track approach is that it's not going through proper channels. And so to ask us to sit here today, Mr. Zerlag, to ascertain what that formula is, we can't possibly do that because this thing hasn't been properly vetted. We're trying to do this backwards. We need to start over because this is essentially a new project. And perhaps one of the most important reasons why the residential existed in the last plan was as a buffer zone to the communities to the north, the northeast, and the northwest. And I think you're going to find significant opposition in the surrounding neighborhoods if you don't meet with them and you try to build this, okay? And I think that's actually exceptionally unfair to the citizens of this city because it's the ultimate bait and switch. So I don't think we can answer that question this evening, but I think what we can do is steer the developer in the right direction so that he's not kind of left sitting in the wind.
If I may, Your Honor, you came in late, Mr. Howrlack. The opening statement that we made was that we weren't going to make a decision, but we would like some direction in this matter. Again, I was asked by the developer what I thought the council would think, what I thought the planning commission would think, and I don't want to speak on their behalf. So it's just a matter of, you currently have a master plan on the shelf that'll stay on the shelf because the person that had or the company that had that PUD approved no longer is going to own the property. So the next question becomes, what do you want to do with the site? Do you want to master plan it, and do you want to do so with the hard and fast rule of one residential unit for, per X number of square feet of retail, or is there an inclination to move forward and develop a master plan? And this would, of course, have input from other components, but move forward predicated on a formula, if you will, based on the reality of market conditions that confront us. I think that's the issue, and if that answer is no, then we know what to do.
Mayor, if I might, I'm afraid the city manager appears to be somewhat tone deaf this evening, and my direction was to direct the developer to meet with neighboring community, the community to the north, the community to the northeast, the community to the northwest, and perhaps even the Downtown Development Authority and the Planning Commission. But I don't think that we, can pull a number out of the air this evening. That's what I said before, and that's what I'm going to say again. The best thing that you can do is to ascertain a level of support in this community for eliminating or reducing the amount of residential. That's what I'm telling you as a member of the City Council to do. And I don't want to hear any additional comments from the city manager because you asked me and I'm answering. Mayor, would you please? I'm done.
If I may, I'm not done. I don't work for you, sir. I work for the governing body, and so if the governing body asks me to proceed in a certain fashion, I most certainly will. I'm keying in on what Mr. Fleming said. And again, it's not to essentially circumvent any input. All I'm doing is asking for your comments. Perhaps Mr. Sakwa
We have
would like to make a
in
comment.
every community we've ever worked in, we've had neighborhood groups. We've rented hotel areas to invite people to come and tell them what we have. Actually, what was going on here is, this is just for this room only. It doesn't mean we were skipping one step, and if you would have been here earlier, you would have heard that we told everybody in this room we weren't skipping anything, that we were going to meet what the meeting dates were, and we weren't going to take anything less than the quality that the development deserves. So we were going to all the hearings, we were going to all the public notices, we were meeting with all the neighbors, which we do on every project we've ever done, and every project we've ever done in Troy, and we happen to have a lot of projects in Troy. So we're not looking to skip anything, and we are looking for public input, and we would get it. But if this body this evening says, listen, we have to have residential today, and that's part of the plan, I'm not interested, and you're not interested, and that's all it's about. Nothing more. Nobody needs to be adversarial. That's all we're doing.
Mr. South, I hate to interrupt, but there's two things I need to do. I need to find out if the Planning Commission is interested in discussing at least the idea that Mr. Tagle brought up.
Yes.
And secondly, we have to take public comment, and we have to be done by 7:15. So. Sorry,
It's not, it's fine with me. Again, I just need a time frame on when
Okay.
anybody, when you think about it for the planning commission to go there.
Right.
I can't unilaterally say I'm absolutely doing residential. I would look at timetables.
know.
And now if nobody has any more questions, I will sit down.
Okay. Mr. Hudson, would you like to comment as
Yes.
chair tonight, or vice chair? from
I
the
guess I'm going to
Planning
speak for
Commission?
the planning commission, whether they agree or not. But my comments were not meant to shut off any debate at all. That my viewpoint, the philosophical point of a mixed use in a PUD was residential was integral to the whole project. Didn't mean to say that we weren't going to discuss it anymore. The formula stands. That's not our intent at all. We'd like to discuss it more. I'd like to keep a dialogue going. And we'd like to continue with meetings.
Okay. And, yes, Mr. Stratt?
No, I
Are you
would
shaking
echo
your head
exactly
yes?
what
Okay.
Mr. Hudson said.
Yes, Councilman Eisenbacher?
I have less of a concern about the lack of residential just because of the market. My biggest concern is that all the features of the mixed use have been eliminated, and it's down to just retail. I mean, there had been discussions about hotel. I don't see a hotel. There have been discussions about office, no office. Way back, we had discussions about work-live, discussions about a movie theater. All those variety is gone. We're talking just retail. And I have a hard time seeing how this would qualify as a mixed use even. Because it's been simplified down to just a rezoning into retail.
Yes, I think that there's some things that should be explored. I don't want to shut off a discussion. I think it's important that we explore and we hear from the community as well as from the Planning Commission and Council on these matters. Remember, tonight is our first real view of this, and so it wasn't something we were going to be able to solve even a portion of it tonight. But I think the exploration of it was important, and it's also important for the two groups to have met together on this. If there are no other comments, I'm going to call on short public comment, but remember that because of our other meeting, we're going to have to make it rather quick. Mrs. Bernardi?
I would like to, first of all, state that I was late when I had to be late because this meeting was scheduled in conflict with one's ability to sign up to speak at the other meeting following this one, which is very important, number one. And that was scheduled through our city administration. And second, and I don't want Grand Soccer to think I'm saying anything towards them, but our city administration had that conflict built into the structure. Also, this place of meeting is very unfamiliar to the public, very unfamiliar to the public. And the reason it was stated was because there wasn't room at the city council meeting, chambers. And as I look around, there would have been adequate space there. The only difference is that the public would be familiar with that place and not familiar with this place. So I did come in late, and as such, I don't know if you covered this, and I would like to know, my concern is cost. I was under the understanding that you were going to ask the DDA of Troy for money, the Brownfield Authority of Troy for money, and the state of Michigan for money. Now, if you cover that, fine. I haven't heard one word since I've been here. And following this meeting, we're going to another meeting where the number one